Hello there, and welcome to Unqualified Opinions. I'm Marko Jerkovic.
And I'm Beiermann.
And on today's video, we'll be discussing ESPN's Week 5 NFL Power Rankings, and we'll be reacting to their top 10. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your own unqualified opinions in the comment section down below. All right, Will, let's get started with their number 10, which is the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think right off the bat, it's interesting, mostly because of who they're ahead of.
11 is the Chiefs, 12 is the Panthers, 13 is the Seahawks, and 14 is the Broncos. So those are kind of the teams that would be your honorable mentions, per se, for this top 10.
So yeah, I think the Raiders being in the top 10 is interesting just in context to the Chiefs not being in the rankings. Do the Raiders have the better record right now at 3-1? Yes. Would either of us, I think, say that the Chiefs are a better team than the Raiders are, though? I would assume you would agree with me. The Chiefs are a better team, but, within the context of the rankings at 3-1, the Raiders probably do make that spot.
Yeah, you do have to punish teams for losing at a certain point. And the team that does make sense to be ahead of the Chiefs is the number 9 ranked team, which is the Los Angeles Chargers, who have been an interesting team so far this season. I mean, they're a last-second field goal from the Cowboys away from being undefeated.
I really don't like them at 9, honestly. The Raiders were number 5 in ESPN's rankings last week, right? How do you beat the number 5 team pretty convincingly with a great performance from your star quarterback, and you don't move up in the rankings? The Chargers are at 9 again. To me, that seems off. I think there's quite a few teams on these rankings that the Chargers are better than, and that I'd put the Chargers over.
And the reason I think they're still at 9 is because the team that jumped them into the number 8 spot, a team that beat them on that last-second field goal, the Dallas Cowboys, who are 3-1, really look to be in the driver's seat in the NFC East.
Obviously not a big Cowboys fan, but yeah, they've played great. Especially, I think the big thing is their defense hasn't been terrible, and that's kind of been what we're used to. I mean, the Cowboys teams we remember from our time as fans are an incredible offensive line, Zeke Elliott, and then either Tony Romo or Dak Prescott. I mean, I'm talking like a couple years ago before Dak, but that line was really good with Travis Frederick, who I think is out of the league now with injuries and stuff. But I mean, Trayvon Diggs has just absolutely balled out for the Cowboys. I think that's 5 interceptions in the last 4 games, which is a crazy number.
Absolutely. So Baltimore is at number 7 after a convincing victory against a Teddy Bridgewater-less Denver Broncos for the most part. Wow. Of course, they got the rushing record for, 43 games now, or was it 42? With 100 rushing yards in consecutive games. They've tied the mid-70 Steelers for that record, and they'll be going for it this Sunday. So just your thoughts on the Ravens at 7.
I think the controversy and the head coach beef over that rushing record is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, it's the most entertaining part of the game.
Harbaugh's insisting that, it's good for the team. It's good for his players. They want to see this record. Broncos organization is obviously pretty unhappy because...
I don't have anything against it. And the Broncos shouldn't care because the Colts are the team that should care most because they'll have the record broken against them. The Colts games are the highlights that are going to get shown on the NFL Films story they do on Baltimore breaking this record.
Yeah, the Ravens, I don't know what to think of them. I think the Raiders and the Ravens are probably the 2 teams I've been the most curious about so far this season. I think the Raiders kind of showed a step back against the Chargers.
So they have the Cleveland Browns at number 6. So what's your opinion of that?
I think it's still weird that makes sense and that's like a good spot for them.
Yeah, it doesn't quite resonate with me that the Cleveland Browns are not only a competent organization, but a Super Bowl contender, and they will be on a perennial basis for the next decade.
They've just built a good team.
Health on the quarterback front and on the defense front. And Cleveland, not only that, they've been playing well, they've been extremely efficient, especially, this is not necessarily an offensive juggernaut, clearly going to be more of a defensive team. But overall, they run the ball well. They are really, really limiting penalties. This is a solid, well-disciplined team.
6 is the perfect spot for them. there's definitely a tier. The 5 teams ahead of them are definitely a tier above when it comes to being Super Bowl contenders. But I mean, Ravens, Cowboys, Chargers are all teams I would put below the Browns. I think that's a perfect spot for them at 6 there.
So at 5, they have the Green Bay Packers, who, other than some first-week jitters, have looked pretty phenomenal, like a front-runner in the NFC with their performances to this point.
Yeah, and they made some interesting pickups, or an interesting pickup and an interesting non-pickup today. They brought in Jalen Smith from the Cowboys, who he's been a Pro Bowler before. I know he's not having a great season so far, but he was mostly cut just due to a lack of playing time by the Cowboys. So just today, they picked up another good, versatile defensive piece. And then they almost picked up Stephon Gilmore today. That was his desired destination if he was cut, and he ended up being traded to the Panthers last second, but that would have been honestly a huge pickup for the Packers.
Yeah, it would have been.
I mean, the defensive backs have been a weak point for them at times, but I mean, yeah, Green Bay, Rodgers is cooking. Green Bay is doing well.
Surprised he didn't go to the number 4 team on this list, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just beat the Patriots, although I don't think that that's necessarily a bad win. It seems like a lot of good teams are probably going to struggle with the Patriots. We'll see how the Bills hold up against them in a few weeks, and they play several more challenging teams. We'll see how they match up against
also
kind of more middling teams like the Broncos and the Panthers.
Yeah, that was a good one, I'd say. I mean, are the Patriots ready to take the next step and contend, maybe even like be a serious playoff threat? No. But it's still a resilient organization, and like you said, they're going to test you every week. So
yeah, and as far as looking at Tampa Bay at number 4, I think this is a good spot. I think they'll probably have games where they don't fully show up. They did win a Super Bowl last year. Their quarterback is an extremely veteran player. Not to say that he's not going to bring it every single week, but that can maybe create some senses of complacency
you're kind of looking
with
at
other players.
For an NBA reference, you're kind of looking at a Lakers situation here where are they going to necessarily ball out, play all their best guys, play the hardest they can every week in the regular season? Possibly not. I mean, but like the Lakers, once you get into the playoffs, suddenly everyone's healthy, everyone's playing major minutes. I mean, the Buccaneers are old enough that I don't think you can expect, just not even with Brady, just around the board, they're an old enough team. You can't expect fireworks every week from them, I don't think.
The biggest thing for me with the Buccaneers is the fact that they're coached by Bruce Arians, who's notoriously kind of lax when it comes to discipline and organization. Obviously, it worked with Tom Brady this year, but maybe do they kind of start to, as far as their styles, do they kind of grind against each other at a certain point where, Brady has so much intensity and maybe Arians doesn't want to bring it at that level every single day for every single practice. But at this moment, they seem to be doing fine. It looks like they've landed in a slightly better division than they thought they would this year, but it shouldn't be a problem. Certainly a lock for a playoff team in the NFL and a good spot at number 4. At 3, ESPN has the LA Rams, obviously above the Buccaneers because they beat them. But your sense on the Rams at 3 and just how they've performed so far this season?
I mean, obviously disappointing to see them losing to the Cardinals like that for me, but 3 is as high as you can put them again, considering their loss to the Cardinals. They're at 3-1 now. I mean, they're fun to watch. I love seeing my guy Stafford just be in a good place, be in a good situation where he doesn't have to deal with perennial Lions blues keeping him down. They've taken the first punch in the NFC West slugfest that division is going to be.
Oh, absolutely. That's the perfect way to say it.
As weird as it is to say, even though we're a quarter of the way through the season, the Rams are 3-1. That one loss to the Cardinals probably matters. Potentially a lot.
Definitely does.
Right off the bat, which is tough. So that's why it's going to be hard to put a big ceiling on them, and at least in power rankings wise. Super Bowl contender, yes, but I mean, can they really be seen as a number 1 team in power rankings for the next couple weeks with the Cardinals ahead of them? Not really. I mean, that was a big loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Just really quick, speaking of Matt Stafford, do you want to guess where the Lions are in the power rankings?
No, I don't. Moving on.
31.
Moving on.
At least they're not Jacksonville.
We're rebuilding.
Either as a football team or an organization currently.
Dan Campbell goes home to his family at night, let me tell you. Getting back on track.
Yeah. So looking at the last two teams, I'm a bit befuddled by this ranking. I know that the number one team has had a bunch of blowout victories, albeit not against the best teams, but the number two ranked Arizona Cardinals are undefeated against some great opponents, but Buffalo is at 1 despite a loss to the Steelers, who look borderline incompetent. So what is your take on their placing of 1 and 2 there?
I'm going to throw this down to the fact that when you're creating sports media content, oftentimes you don't want to have the consensus pick that everyone's going to have. You got to do something that is going to get people interested. People are going to be talking about the Cardinals being below the Bills. It's a good thing to throw to Stephen A's World and all your other ESPN NFL shows. That being said, I think if we're talking power rankings, Cardinals are obviously 1 undefeated team, last one. They beat a really good Rams team. I think the Bills would beat them if they played today. But
yeah, I think they might.
This is power rankings, so I think Cardinals
depending on the status of a Hail Mary.
Yeah. I think the Cardinals should be 1. I think the Bills are a better team, but power rankings are a little different than actual on the field stuff sometimes.
Right, yeah, it's completely different. So just looking at the Cardinals' future schedule, just considering they're the last undefeated team, looking at when they'll lose next, stop me when you think we've got a loss. So 49ers, at the Browns, at the Texans.
I'm not going to say they're going to lose to the Browns, but at Cleveland is, if I had to guess, at Cleveland is a place that very well could happen.
Yeah, and then after playing at Cleveland, they are at home against the Texans, and then they have Packers and then at 49ers. I certainly think in those 5 games, there's got to be a loss somewhere between 2 49ers games and the Browns and the Packers. Not to say that, the Cardinals are going to come crashing back down to earth, and they're still going to be a great team, but certainly going to suffer at least 1 loss in there somewhere.
And then in comparison, to take a look at the Bills, they get Kansas City this week. After that, you get Tennessee, which is anyone's guess how good they'll be on a given week. But after that, it's Miami. They have a bye week. Miami, Jacksonville, New York Jets, Indianapolis Colts, New Orleans Saints. Then New England, Tampa. It gets harder from there, but they have a very relaxing looking schedule after this Chiefs game.
Absolutely. So that's ESPN's top 10 NFL power rankings. Of course, they have a full 32 if you want to check that out. We just had time for the top 10 and Detroit, as we usually do.
You monster.
So that is that. If you like this video, don't forget to click subscribe and like it, and leave a comment down below with any other video ideas you have for us. For Will Beiermann, I'm Marko Jerkovic. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you guys next time.